So it appears that it's all meaningless and we are going on and on and on, but it's not like that. As we have seen that the spirit's potencies are there for help. We'll just take this overlap from the last few lines. Alive in a dead rotating universe, we whirl not here upon a casual globe. So it's not just a chance, Big Bang chance happening that Earth is created and the man is here. We are not abandoned, we are not lost as we feel many a times in our vicissitudes of life, the difficulties of life. We feel that as if we are lost, there's no one really overlooking us. But we are not abandoned. We whirl not here upon a casual globe, abandoned to a task beyond our force. Now, what is the task? The task is this divine realization in human form. And that is not for only a few fellows, it's for each one of us. It's not that only a few special human beings have the possibility of manifestation of Godhead in human form. That is our destiny. Each one of us is almost, we have a birthright that this must happen, this will happen, the manifestation of Godhead in our mortal form. And we are not abandoned to some task given which is beyond our force. Everything is within our powers. It's only that we take a long time, many lifetimes even, to wake up to the force and strength that yes, it is possible for me. Even though the tangled anarchy called fate, when we look at fate, the way we look at fate, it appears that as if there is no ruler, anything can happen anytime and I'm just puppeted around. But it's not like that, although it appears so. So even through, and there through it's there, though it's tangled, it's like you cannot connect the dots. We try to connect the dots in our external situations, relationships, but we are never able to truly connect the dots. Why that thing happened, this thing happened. Everything is so entangled within each other. Even through the tangled anarchy called fate, despite of all this tanglement and fate, so-called seeming anarchist fate, and through the bitterness of death and fall. So maybe I have a mission to fulfill in this life, but I am dead. Death happens and the mission is not fulfilled. So what? The journey continues. But it's bitter. We feel that as if we had a mission to fulfill. We were doing such good job, and death happened. So as if it appears that it's not what we would like to go through, but it happens. It happens to everyone. And fall, whenever we make mistakes, whenever we in our ignorance we act in a very limited, narrow fashion, we later in retrospect may realize that what was the necessity of us going through that experience. But we do make errors. Human life is full of errors that we make in our ignorance. So even through the bitterness of death and fall, an outstretched hand is felt upon our lives. So those of us who are sensitive enough, they can easily, in later on in reflections, see that yes, maybe there was some lesson for me for there to learn. It's not for no reason that the situation happened. So grace is right here throughout, guiding us towards more and more shedding of layers of ignorance. And this is where we stopped. So let us take up new lines. Yeah, anyone who wants to read?
It is near us in unnumbered bodies and births. In its unslackening grasp, it keeps for us safe. The one inevitable supreme result. No will can take away and no doom change. The crown of conscious immortality, the Godhead promised to our struggling souls when first man's heart dared death and suffered life.
Yeah, very powerful lines here for all of us. Very, very powerful, full of a certitude, divine certitude. So this outstretched hand, this as if we are in the lap of the divine, although we are unaware, we are ignorant of that lap. It is near us in unnumbered bodies and births. This divine presence, this outstretched hand, is near us in unnumbered bodies and births. No matter how many lifetimes I may have gone through, this divine presence has always been with me. In its unslackening grasp, a grasp which will not let go, it will not loosen the grip, that kind of a grasp. In its unslackening grasp, it keeps for us safe. What does it keep for us safe? As if you're holding, little children when they are walking and they find a treasure, even a little rounded stone or something, some leaf, some twig becomes a treasure for them. So they will keep on holding to it tightly, they're keeping it in their grasp, keeping safe. So this outstretched hand, in its unslackening grasp, keeps for us safe. What does it keep for us safe? The one inevitable supreme result. This is the beauty. It's inevitable. The manifestation of divine presence in each one of us, through each one of us, is inevitable in our human journey. No matter how many lifetimes it may take, that's immaterial. The one inevitable supreme result, no will can take away, no doom can change. No matter, I have been a murderer in my last time, I have been a villain, I've been a Ravana kind of a personality, doesn't matter. No amount of sins, although it's my conscious choice, I'm making consciously those errors if I am, yet despite of whatever sins I may have committed, ultimate certitude is this inevitable supreme result, that we will all manifest the Godhead within. That would be manifested without in this human form. No will can take away, no doom can change. So nothing can harm that treasure. No lifetime spent in no matter how much falsehood can harm that treasure. That's the beauty. It's a win-win situation. No will can take away, no doom can change the crown of conscious immortality. Now, unconsciously, we are all immortals. We all know that. Unconsciously, we are all immortals. But consciously, we have to become aware of our immortality. I have to stabilize myself, know myself as that immortal presence within me. Right now, I don't know myself as that. Right now, I know myself as this body. Right now, I know myself as the thoughts, feelings, and my story. And hence, I will live in fear and anxiety that, oh my God, what will happen if? So I'm full of fear and anxiety, and it keeps on propping up again and again, this fear, anxiety that I live with. Many a times I may be in a beautiful state of consciousness, and there I may not fearing. But the moment something happens to me, which is full of attachment in my life, there I begin to fear. So that anxiety, that fear that I sense is just a kind of an indicator that I just have to stabilize myself more, know myself more and more knowingly as this immortal presence within me, the consciousness which makes us aware of anything that we are aware of. We have to become aware of it consciously. Unconsciously, we are all Buddhas. Unconsciously, we are all divine. But we have to actually consciously become divine in each thought, each feeling, each action, each word, that we speak, or, the thoughts that we may be thinking in our head. So this crown of conscious immortality, nobody can snatch away from me. It's kept for us safe by this outstretched hand. The Godhead promised to our struggling souls. This is the Godhead. This crown of conscious immortality is the Godhead, which has been promised to our struggling souls when the souls dipped into this adventure of mortal human birth. We all knew, Mother says, that all of the souls who take human birth, they are aware of the vicissitudes and difficulties of life. It's not that they are jumping in and nobody's forcing them. But it's like we are aware that, yes, there is so much of adventure. Now, let me go through this adventure. Okay, darkness is there. Let me go through this darkness. Why? Because I am full of light. Soul is full of light, and that's why it can go through darkness. So this is the last line. When first man's heart dared death and suffered life. So it plunged into this suffering human life. The mortal life is full of suffering, full of attachments, and slowly, in gradual degrees, we become aware that, oh my God, I'm clinging too much. Maybe I have to let go so as to really to be able to live and love and be compassionate and kind to myself and others. So in degrees, we become aware of our clinging to material attachments, and even thought, feelings, and stories are our attachments. All the thoughts that I plunge in when I'm sitting idle, we keep on thinking. We are just attached to those thoughts, and we cannot just let them go, as if there is some juice that is there, as if there is a delight that is there. So we keep on thinking again and again about those stories, as if that is the most important thing in my life. But in slowly through our experiences, we become aware that the most important thing in our life is to be one consciously with the divine presence within. Whatever method one may follow, that doesn't matter. Only that is supreme felicity. Yeah, so this is the Godhead which is promised to each one of us who takes a mortal birth. So keep sharing if anyone has any reflections as we go ahead. Please keep sharing. So let us maybe read through until here. Yeah. Anyone who feels ready.
One who has shaped this world is ever its Lord. Our errors are his steps upon the way. He works through the fierce vicissitude of our lives. He works through the hard breath of battle and toil. He works through our sins and sorrows and our tears. His knowledge overrules our nescience.
Yeah. So the one who has shaped this world is ever its Lord. No one can take away that seat from him, because there is no one else but him who will take the seat. One who has shaped this world is ever its Lord. Our errors are his steps upon the way. So when we commit errors, when we commit mistakes, it's because of our ignorance that we do that. It's because of our just limited mind, the way we just get to know in little windows that we become aware of things and happenings. So owing to my limitations, owing to my ignorance, I commit errors. But those errors make me conscious of what I was earlier unconscious of. So that is a beautiful way of living life. That can I use all my errors and mistakes consciously, admitting them that yes, that was a mistake. I agree. Not admitting it to anyone. हमको किसी को जाके नहीं बोलना है. For our own self, admitting that, oh yes, I could have done better, but then it taught me this. It made me learn this. This is where I was lacking. This was my weakness. Maybe I was too attached. Maybe I was clinging too much. Maybe I wanted some name, some respect. That is why this happened. So in our ignorance, we are driven by impulses, by instincts. We are not aware of these impulses. And even then, our errors are just his steps upon the way to make us more and more conscious of this life. Our movements, our little nitty-gritties of life. We become more and more conscious. Mother says that, somebody asked, why do accidents happen? And Mother says that it just happens so that we become more conscious. Maybe I was walking, I was taking a walk. I was thinking in my head why I'm taking a walk, and thinking not, we can always think, but thinking in a manner which is an unconscious pattern. I'm not even aware where my foot is, and I'm thinking in my head. So I have no awareness of my leg, no awareness of where my body is, and suddenly I slip. So when I slip, can I just thank you, the divine, thank you, the divine presence, because it made me aware that I was really not aware of the walking itself. So in that way, the errors become steps upon the way. He works through the fierce vicissitudes of our life, our difficulties, our real tough challenges that all of us go through. Each one is having their own battles. Who is one person in this world who is without a battle? Everyone has been given as if a raw material to work upon, each one of us. So still, through our challenges and battles, he is working through that one, the one who is the Lord of everything. He is working through the fierce vicissitudes of our lives. He works through the hard breath of battle and toil. So much battle in life, emotional toil, mental conflicts, physical, disturbances come up again and again. Because as long as we have this human body, something or other comes up, in the body. He works through all that. He works through the hard breath of battle and toil. Now, let us look at our own selves. We are here today and we have this blessing of reading through Savitri's lines. And can we ask ourselves, would we be here if not for our battle and toil? I doubt it. I doubt it, because we are such a, almost like kutte ki pooch, dog's tail, that it's only mostly majorly because of our toil and battle that we get straightened up. Our ego consciousness is so hard that it takes a lot of hammering so that it becomes receptive and a bit, like open to light and grace. So all that toil and battle is making something happen. So he works through the hard battle of battle and toil. He works through our sins and sorrows and our tears. Everything is a work going on, veiled work. The inner carpenter is working. We are not even aware. He works through our sins. Many a times, people really get stuck in sin. I am a sinner. I have committed so many crimes. Even so-called normal human beings who are living normal human lives, we hide our sins. We don't really are able to share it, because what will people think about me? We share it maybe with one little fellow who is a bit non-judgmental, who would understand what I'm going through. Otherwise, we keep it hidden. We don't want to disclose it. But the thing is that the work is happening. So no need to label myself as a sinner. We are all sinners, because we have all swayed from the divine essence. In that way, we are all sinners. So he works through our sins. He works through our sorrows and tears. His knowledge overrules our nescience, our ignorance, our inconscience, does not stand in front of this supreme light and truth. Such is the power. And the supreme light and truth is working from behind the curtains. It appears that, oh my God, the world is so dark. Let's look at, the things happening in the world. And yet the divine will is unfolding itself. Such are the ways. Such is the power. And that's why we, again and again in prayers and meditations, we see Mother bringing up the divine certitude that the victory is yours only, no matter how many lifetimes or how much eons it may take. So very empowering words here. Yeah, anyone, any reflections or anything that you want to share?
Yeah, these lines are called Abhaya Mantra, Monica, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, this page, the whole page, no, it is very important lines. We can add up in daily meditation also, even coming lines also, whatever the appearance we must bear, whatever, yeah.
Very
all
powerful.
this lines, yeah, very powerful, called as Abhaya Mantra, because I heard in one of the talk of Dr. Nadkarni,
Okay.
He used to give, yeah, he's no more now.
Yeah.
He used to give Savitri talks.
Hmm.
He stressed upon these lines again and again. He used to, even if you don't read the whole Savitri, if you concentrate upon only upon these lines, it will automatically lead you to other cantos. It seems
Beautiful.
like.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for sharing. So let's, yeah, go ahead. You want to read, Chitraji?
Yeah, I will read. Whatever the appearance we must bear, whatever our strong ills and present fate, when nothing we can see but drift and bail, a mighty guidance leads us still through all. After we have served this great divided world, God's bliss and oneness are our inborn right.
Yeah. So again, as Chitraji was sharing, it actually, feels like very powerful. She's calling it Abhay Mantra, as they call it, Abhay Mantra. So it makes you fearless, I believe. Abhay is fearless. So whatever the appearance, we must bear. So if I become aware of this veiled action of the Supreme, then I would not be harassed by the impulses in me. Then I cannot be in a haste, or that yes, what I want must happen. So whatever the appearance, we must bear. I think it also connects us with a deep calm within. If we look at life in such a way that yes, I know some unfolding is happening, that's why I've been presented with such a challenge, and can I act from my highest possible, whatever highest possible, now that I'm aware of all this, can I act from the highest possible state of consciousness? Is that a possibility? Because if we do not act from the highest possible state of consciousness, especially when we can, then we continue the wheel of karma running, cause and effect. We are as if stuck in that chakki of, the chalti chaki dekh ke diya kabira roy. दो पाटन के बीच में साबुत बचाना कोई. So Kabir also talks of this, the grinding wheel of cause and effect, karma. If we want to break through that grinding wheel, we have to choose to act from the highest possible state of consciousness in that moment. Many a times we are unaware, but now that we are becoming, at least through these lines of Savitri, now we know that it is in my hands. I can choose to act in a certain way, respond in a certain way in any situation, no matter how tough it is. So then I cancel out the cause and effect. I step out of that grinding wheel. I will not be pissified. I would not be ground. Whatever the appearance, we must bear. Whatever our strong ills and present fate, when nothing we can see but drift and bail. Bail is unfortunate events. Drift is, when we are just like puppeted, you see that events are just puppeting you around, drifting. उधर से झोंका आया, उधर चल दिए, इधर से झोंका आया, इधर चल दिए. When nothing we can see but drift, we can only see drift, and we can only see unfortunate, unexpected situations. Even through all these so-called unexpected, unfortunate events, a mighty guidance leads us still through all. So this something more, and that's why we call it mysticism. Something more is there beyond our limited mind's perception. Can we just be open to it? We may not know it. We may know it at times, through our contemplations and deep reflections. But most of the times, the limited mind is not aware. So can I just, the thing is, whenever we talk of surrender, surrender is just this little opening, one by one, little, openings are, we are becoming, from a stone, we are becoming a sponge. We are becoming porous to the grace present around us. So a mighty guidance is leading us still through all. And can I just have a little bit of faith that, yes, let me go through all this. And I'm sure it will make me better and better and better as a human being, it'll chisel me and shape me, all these events. So that kind of a faith, if we can have through the tough, especially tough, because good situations everyone can take care of. We don't read Savitri to go through good situations. We read Savitri because we have been troubled. Such is the human condition. After we have served this great divided world, the division between what the heart wants, the division between what the mind thinks that what is to be done in this life. The mind has certain ambitions and desires which it wants to follow, and the heart, the deepest aspirations are something else. So there is a split, and it takes a long time before I am conscious enough that I take a decision, no matter how hard, to stand by my heart and not to give in to the demands of greed, ambition, and the worldly running here and there. It takes a lot of time for us to gather that courage that yes, now I have suffered enough. I want to follow the call of my heart. I know this is the call. And I cannot but walk the call of the heart. Unite further and further with our higher possibility on this path, whatever is the path for each one of us. After we have served this great divided world, so once we have had enough, daudat daudiya, jahan lagi man ki daud thake man sthir bhaya. So this thakna, this tiredness of our own efforts, running here and there for our bliss and satisfaction, knowing that we will never find it anywhere, only then we come back home. Only when we put an effort to come back home, because coming back home is also requires a lot of effort. Sit for meditation. See how the mind wanders. How many minutes can we be still? We can't, So it requires a lot of effort so that the default pattern of the chattering of the mind, we stop buying into it actually, and we enter into a meditative silence. So let us put that effort, because that's the only worth it. That's the supreme felicity. That's the lasting happiness that we can have. After we have served this great divided world, God's bliss and oneness are our inborn right. So almost I can see this, almost leading us to how to meditate. So if I have now been tired of running around in my thoughts and running around people and life situations to make things better for me, and that has not happened, that will never happen, I'm sure now. Now I settle down in my being, and now I can meditate. Now I can be one with my divine presence for a long time in that meditative silence. Now God's bliss and oneness are our inborn right. So again, very powerful lines, beautiful lines. So let's go ahead. Anyone who wants to go ahead, read?
Read, madam.
Yeah, please, Mohan.
A date is fixed in the calendar of the unknown, an anniversary of the birth sublime. Our soul shall justify its checkered walk. All will come near that now is not or far. These calm and distant mights shall act at last. Thank you, madam.
Thank you, Mohan. So for this coming out of the divine presence, manifesting of the divine presence in its fullness, the life divine, as Sri Aurobindo puts it, a date is fixed in the calendar of the unknown. So there is a certitude, and Sri Aurobindo says even the date is fixed, but it's not in our knowing. It's in the knowing of the unknown. It's only the unknown, the one who cannot be known. Because all I can know is through my limited mind. But what is the source of that limited mind cannot be known by the mind itself. So that ways it's unknown, and it's also indefinite. So I like a little glass. It may appear that yes, I know this glass, I've been using this glass for a couple of years now. It is made of this glass, it is pink in color, this and this. But even there, if we look deeply at the subatomic level, particulate level, we see that we don't really know. No, even there, it's indefinite. We can go into the depths of knowing. So although an outer object may seem to be definite object, it's indefinite yet. And just like that, we know people in our life. How with surety we claim that yes, I know this person. but that's not true. We really don't know that person, because just like we are indefinite, we are infinite within ourselves, the other person is also infinite. So how can I claim to know? So this date is fixed when God's bliss and oneness will be our inborn, it will manifest. The date is fixed in the calendar of the unknown. So just Janam Sadadikar, this our birthright, when it will manifest, it is fixed. An anniversary of the birth sublime. Now, all that we know of is the physical birth. We take birth, and then continuously we keep on celebrating our birthdays of physical birth. But why are we born? We are born so that we can give birth to our own self. We can give birth to the Godhead within. That's the purpose of our being born. That's why human birth has been so precious. But we rarely do make true conscious use of it. If we are so much distracted all the time, we are really, everything else is so important, but the springing out of this Godhead. And only in lifetimes of an unconscious process, we become aware that there is a work to be done. So this is birth sublime, a sublime birth, not the physical birth, but a birth which is a true birth of the Godhead within. An anniversary of the birth sublime, our soul shall justify its checkered walk. So when that manifestation of divine presence happens, when the divine thrones itself knowingly in our being, then all my older struggles and lifetimes of persistence will be justified. Checkered walk, you have this chessboard, black and white squares on it. So darkness, light, darkness, light, darkness, light. We keep on like a pendulum swaying from darkness and light in our lifetimes. But all that will make it worth when this manifestation of the Godhead within happens. Our soul shall justify its checkered walk. All will come near that now is not or far. What is far? I live in attachment. I don't really know of love. So love appears to be something far. Compassion, kindness, true courage, goodness, goodwill, all that I see that it is a possibility. At times I may be able to touch those spheres, but most of the times I live in a mental chatter, mostly full of negativity, ill will, and not really, I would say, the highest possible for me. So all that is far will become near. All will come near that now is not or far. These calm and distant mights, the powers that we were talking of in the earlier passages, the spirit's potencies, which are immovable, unshakable, these calm and distant mights shall act at last. So these distant mights, jo abhi, they appear to be very, very far off. Oh my God, talk of love, pure love. And where is love in my life? All I have is clinging. I have is attachment. Where is love in my life? I cling to my ideas. I cling to people in life. I cling to my children. I cling to my own conceptions of myself. But these powers, true love, true compassion, true kindness, true strength, divine strength, all these powers will flood this existence at last when the right time is there. Right now I'm not strong enough. When we talk of bliss, now I can say all I want is bliss, but if bliss truly comes even for 2 seconds, am I strong enough to hold it? Is the container strong enough? And we see that we are not really strong enough. We are in tears, even if a little bit of bliss touches us. I'm sure all of us have had experiences. A little bit of calmness and beauty would touch us and we are in tears. We can't hold it. So slowly, as we become suitable containers, in lifetimes, as we become suitable containers, we are able to then hold those mights and potencies and then manifest it out also. So these calm and distant mights shall act at last. Yeah, anyone who's ready can read next.
Immovably ready for their destined task, the ever wise, compassionate brilliances await the sound of the incarnate's voice to leap and bridge the chasm of ignorance and heal the hollow yearning gulfs of life and fill the abyss that is the universe.
Yeah. So these powers, these mights are immovably ready. They are just like, have you seen very, very solid, loyal servants? They're just right at the doorstep of the master and yes, Saab, they're just ready because they just don't know what else to do to have a worthy use of this life, but to stand at the feet of the Lord, the master. So they are immovably ready. They are in attention that when would be the signal given. Immovably ready for their destined task. The ever wise, they're forever full of this purity of wisdom. Ever wise, compassionate brilliances, these spirits' potencies that we were talking of earlier, await the sound of the incarnate's voice. I am imagining like, a master is sitting inside and the servant is waiting outside and he's just a little noise and he's very, very alert that the master is calling me, that I must present the master with, either milk or tea or whatever, the demand is. So these ever wise, compassionate brilliances, all they want is the good of existence, await the sound of incarnate's voice. Now, who is an incarnate? One which is a kind of something divine embodied in mortal form, divine in a bodied existence. So the divine presence, which will call from within the embodiment of these bodies, it's waiting. The powers are waiting for that call to leap. He jumps, the servant jumps that, hey, master has called me, to leap and bridge the chasm of ignorance. So there is a huge gulf between our knowing and living. We may read beautiful literature and which we must read. It's not that we should not. And yet when it comes to action, we know how much of a gulf it is, that we fail again and again. So these powers, as we become ready in our strength to have act like a container for these powers through our own vicissitudes of life, these powers will leap and bridge these big gaps of ignorance. So the difference between knowing and living would be reduced and maybe vanish forever. That knowing is living itself. I am conscious of my divine presence and my actions are also conscious actions. And they will heal the hollow yearning gulfs of life and fill the abyss that is this universe. The universe at the moment is full of suffering. Each one is suffering in their own little form. But that is not our destiny. That is just where we are right now. But as I grow in my experiences, I was listening to a talk, and there it was said that we are like pieces of wood and sandpaper, difficult situations, difficult people, all these difficulties of life are like sandpaper. And if we want to polish the wood, if we want to make this wood smoother, rubbing it with a cloth won't do. The cloth will tear apart. Rubbing it with a sandpaper will make it smoother. So a beautiful example of how these difficulties and struggles are the ones who are making me a suitable container of holding, or even manifesting the divine presence within, or holding more love, more compassion, more bliss, because it takes a lot of strength, I would say, to hold true love. And that's why we read here in mother's story, Savitri, how she was the perfect receptacle for the container of the divine love. Not everyone can do that. We may say that all I want is love, but when love kind of comes in its full purity, our container will break. So I feel that it's a process of purification that happens through our challenges, in which our strength increases, if it has to, so that true love can be contained, so that we become manifestation of love itself. Each one of us has this power, and the world at the moment needs, what does the world need? Not more engineers and more carpenters, and not more building makers. We need more compassion. We need more kindness, generosity, goodwill, goodwill for each other. And try to do this. Those of us who are interested, sit in meditative silence and try to extend goodwill to especially those people who are very difficult in your life. That may you be good and happy, and may you be well and happy. See how difficult it is. Some part of me would not be able to do it, and as if you have to put effort, that no, I have to. This is the best possible way. So you put effort and make all those persons, which even maybe not in the category of good human beings, you put them in the circle and you radiate out love to them, you radiate kindness to them. And we will see how hard it is, because there is a resistance that does not allow me to open my heart. That, oh my God,
Monica.
Yes, please.
I'm supposed to ask this question to you actually. How to send that unconditional love to the person who are very difficult in our life actually. But as you said, I used to feel, even if the response is not there, that is okay, but those things are coming up actually, whether they are worthy of it. This this question is coming up always, whether they are worthy of this love, actually divine love. I don't know, but same time, this question also arises in me, whether I am also worthy of divine love, but divine is loving me actually. So that is also there.
Beautiful.
So this,
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Chitra ji, imagine that there are two kids. One kid is, there are, different nature of kids. One kid is very naughty and he keeps on harming others unknowingly in his ignorance. The other kid is a silent one who is mostly contained within himself. Now, who would need actually more divine grace?
Naughty kid,
so it's like whatever we do, even those people who may be difficult to us, and they are difficult, it's not that we can challenge the difficulty, but they are not doing it in their consciousness. They themselves don't know how much harm it's causing, first to themselves and then to others. And there I can actually radiate out compassion, because they need it more than me. So when I can actually say this, that mother, I am okay right now. You shower more grace there. So I can become a little selfless, that mother, you if you want, you charge, you channel your grace there mostly, because the person who is harming me, for example, in his ignorance, is the one who is suffering himself also.
Correct.
So, and there, by natural, it's very natural that compassion originates.
Thank you, Monica.
Because the more closer we go to this literature and also to our own self, we see that all of us wants peace and happiness, but we think that I will get it by disturbing others, by having control over others, by fixing this and that, and we will never get it. The only true happiness each one of us can have is in the divine presence within. So when I know that a person is in state of ego consciousness, we may be aware of that. we can understand how much suffering it is, because we have suffered in our ego consciousness. So I can understand, oh my God, how much suffering it is for you when you are acting out of ego consciousness. No one can be happy in ego consciousness. So it's actually very, very natural for me to then, radiate love and compassion, that I am doing okay now. I am in a so-called easy state. I'm not disturbed that much. So please, grace, although grace is abundant, so it's not that it is limited grace. So grace, please, channel yourself to that person who is needing it the most. And Alokda, in one of the talks I was sharing with all of you, he shared that imagine that there is a ship which is going to the divine. You be the last person on that ship. Such is the selflessness that is required of us, that you make sure that everyone reaches in that ship. And then when the horn blows, that okay, last call, final call, then you be the last person that okay, now I can get it. So look at this, the selflessness. I think that was such a beautiful example that he shared, one of the prayers, I guess. Can we have that kind of selflessness? Yeah.
When coming, hello,
Yeah.
am I audible first?
Yes.
Okay. So coming to the fact that living with or facing a difficult person, I think a lot of times we only feel that that other person is being difficult to me, and in reciprocation, we also become difficult actually to that other person. We actually do not often. I mean, we don't know that whether we are making it easy, we are not making it easy, and then maybe a prayer for both both of us can make a huge difference. That we both don't know, we both are being difficult to each other, and probably you can help me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a beautiful way to look at this situation.
Yeah, beautiful. Yes.
Yeah. Because then you call the highest possible, and as you are saying that the pain body reacts to the pain body, so
Yeah.
so if other
And
person is angry, so I also reciprocate, retaliate. Yeah, please go
yeah,
ahead.
and it's just not about anger, it's about the fact that the other person is in pain, I am also in pain, and we both do not really want to be in pain. I mean, nobody really wants to be in pain, and but there is, I mean, right at that moment there is no solution to that problem, but the only solution probably is to go through that pain completely, to recognize, to feel that pain, and then pray. Apart from that, there are moments in life when you're really helpless about that particular situation. I mean, running away is not a solution, and it cannot, probably it cannot.
Yeah.
So then
Absolutely. I think it's beautiful. And this is reminding me of, in Harry Potter, there comes this sentence that, this guy Dumbledore, he says that those who shall ask for it will receive help, something like that. So I think we should more often ask for it. Yeah, beautiful. And that itself is a kneeling down of the ego, because the ego now is sharing that mere bas ka to nahi hai, like mere se nahi hoga, humse nahi hoga. So that itself is a call from a surrendered ego that you take charge. And whenever the divine takes the charge, things actually, not only external things, I think our attitude actually within changes, and when the attitude within changes, then external also changes.
And I think it's about the attitude, and it is painful actually. Even while praying, you don't feel bliss completely. But even through that pain, if you can, at least, I mean, this is my own experience. If I can pray and surrender, try to surrender. Of course, complete surrender is not even possible. But if I try to, then there comes a time, even maybe not then, later in life, then you really understand the meaning of all those prayers that you have had, in your life.
Yeah, beautiful. So let us maybe take a last few lines and then we can close. let's see. Okay, this is a bit longer, but we can do that. Yeah. So let's do it in parts, 2 parts maybe. Yeah. So anyone who feels ready can read the yellow portion.
Yeah, Lidi. Here, meanwhile, at the spirit's opposite pole, in the mystery of the deeps that God has built, for his abode below the thinker's sight, in this compromise of a stark absolute truth, with the light that dwells near the dark end of things, in this tragicomedy of divine disguise, this long far seeking for joy ever near, in the grandiose dream of which the world is made, in this gold dome on a black dragon base.
Yeah. So here, meanwhile, and now he talks of something else. Here, meanwhile, at the spirit's opposite pole, in the mystery of the deeps that God has built, the mystery of the inconscience, the mystery of the darkness that troubles us, the mystery of the finite, the infinite hiding within the finite. And that's why we say truth is a paradox, that how can infinite hide within finite, and that's where we can question that the finite, which appears as a finite owing to the senses, is it truly finite? As we were talking of that glass, that even if we go to the depth of a finite cup or a glass, we will see that it's infinite. There is no end to that glass, although in form it appears to have a finite appearance. So this mystery, the paradox here, meanwhile, in the spirit's opposite pole, in the mystery of the deeps that God has built, the matter, the inconscient, for his abode below the thinker's sight. The mind cannot go there. It's like hidden. It's for his abode below the thinker's sight. I think this refers maybe to the thinkers in capital, because it may be the true idea or true thought where it comes from the higher realms. So below those higher realms, in this compromise of a stark absolute truth with the light that dwells near the dark end of things. So as if the existence, the manifestation where we live, there is a compromise at each moment. What is the compromise? The compromise of a stark absolute truth, a truth which is certain, certitude is there, but it is compromise in a compromise situation with the light that dwells near the dark end of things. So as if they are juxtaposed, next to each other. Yes, there is truth also. Yes, there is divine presence. And parallelly, we also see that we have to go through so much of darkness before you touch the light. Light, little bit of light that dwells near the dark end of things. When we talk about pain, when we talk about darkness and challenge in our life, we often see that those people who have gone to the roots of their darkness, who have been able to go to the roots, and it's like an infinite journey. It's not that if once I have touched, it goes on and on. They will be able to get back some light in their life. So that's why we see the rise of human spirit, people who go through so much of challenges, undergoing so many traumas. Just because they have been able to go through the depths of those traumas, they also see the light in those challenges. So there is a light which is dwelling near the dark end of things, but which is juxtaposed. It's a very compromised position. The absolute truth is also here, and yet one has to go through this dark tunnel. In this tragic comedy of divine disguise, we talk about Leela, that Lord Krishna is playing disguise, he's hiding here and there and taking different forms and fooling his bhaktas. So I am here, yet not here. You grasp me, yet you are not, able to grasp me. And it's like a tragic comedy. In Greek literature, we have these idea of coming from Shakespeare, the tragic comedy. So it's like a divine comedy. So you go through so much of challenges, and when we are able to see in retrospect, we also see the light behind those tragedies, and we are able to even laugh about it. So there is as if there is a divine comedy happening in our lives, each one. In this tragic comedy of divine disguise, this long, far seeking for joy ever near. We are all seeking for joy. One may say, I am looking for a partner. Now will I still look for a partner if somebody tells me that once you have the partner, you will be suffering? No, I won't. So what I truly want is joy. Maybe I want to have children. I can't have children. So would I still have children if people say that you would suffer miserably if you have children? No, I won't, because it's just because I feel that having children will make me joyous. So all that we are looking for, all that we are seeking is this joy. But this joy is forever near. Our Buddha nature, our true nature is never apart from us. We are that, but we have to become conscious of that. So effort is needed. But first we have to go through so many experiences, run here and there, bang my head on the walls. Okay, yahan milega, here I will find lasting happiness, there I will find lasting happiness. If I fix this relationship, then my life will become happy and divine. But that is not going to happen. So can I tap into this joy, which is part of my own being? This long, far seeking for joy, which is ever near. It is so close that we ignore it. That's why we call it ignorance. So it's not that I'm not in touch with it. It's just that I'm not aware of it. And that's where the effort is required. In the grandiose dream of which the world is made, in this gold dome on a black dragon base. So I was, referring to Shraddhavan's commentary, and she says that this black dragon is coming from this scriptures, the Vedas, where they use this black dragon base as a name for the inconscient. And what the dragons do is they guard a treasure. So they collect all the precious things, they hide it in a cave. They are not using that treasure. It's not that they are having fun with the treasure, but they would not let anyone touch it but a hero warrior. So these dragons are of the inconscient, of the darkness. They are hiding this treasure of our own true nature in their darkness, and they will not let us go through. They are not even making use of the treasure themselves, but they will not let us go through. So one need a lot of strength, not of courage. That's why we call hero spirit, the warrior spirit. That am I ready to go through that challenge, plunge into the darkness and touch that true treasure? So this gold dome is all the perfection, all the light that we can have in this mortal birth, which is based on this darkness of the inconscient. So we have to go through that darkness. We have to go through all those difficulties, challenges, face them, confront them, and then only we can have this treasure, the sight of the treasure. Yeah? And then it continues. So yeah, anyone who feels ready.
The conscious force that acts in nature's dust, a dark-robed labor in the cosmic scheme, carrying clay images of unborn gods, executrix of the inevitable idea, hampered, enveloped by hoofs of fate, patient trustee of slow eternal time, absolves from hour to hour her secret charge.
Yes. So this is the Shakti, the Aditi, mother, the divine mother, this force that is there in us. Consciousness is coupled with force. And this is especially talking of this, the movement of life. It feels that it is a mechanical movement, that Big Bang happened, and since then all the planets and have been just rolling and rolling, as if it's a mechanical movement. But no, it's a conscious force. It knows what it is doing. It's not dumb, mute, blind force. So the conscious force of evolution that acts in nature's breast, a dark robed laborer in the cosmic scheme. So why dark robe? Because obviously it is not conscious. If we look at the surface, it appears that it is not conscious. So on obvious pattern, it's like the superficial look, it appears that it's just a rut, mechanical rut going on and on and on and on. But no, we see that how in evolution we have we were first all stones, then the consciousness evolved into something more conscious, like a plant, a little unicellular organism, maybe then multicellular, more complex. So this is how we have evolved. It's not a unconscious evolution that is happening. A conscious force that acts in nature's breast, a dark robed. So it's not very obvious. That's why it is dark robed. It appears that it's unconscious. A dark robed laborer in the cosmic scheme, carrying clay images of unborn gods. We are those clay images of unborn gods. So we have the potential of giving birth to the divine presence, but we have not yet done that. So we have to invoke when we have to install a deity in a temple. What we do, what the priests do, they invoke the divine presence. They do the rituals, they do all the purification processes, and then they invoke the divine presence, that here, now please come, take a stand. So that's the invocation that is required in each one of us, if we truly want to make it a life divine. It's not that out of 7 days I am doing something else and one day I remember, although even that one day will be made use of, but just like that it cannot happen. I have to put effort. We are all born in inertia. I have to put effort. Effort is required everywhere. So we are all carrying images of unborn gods, but they have to be given birth. We have to become conscious of our divinity, carrying clay images of unborn gods, executress of the inevitable idea, this force of Prakriti, this Shakti. It's the executor of the idea from the Supreme that came out. When Mother talks of the story of creation, he says that the Supreme was all happy by himself and he thought that no fun. So he emanated Shakti out of himself. He emanated Aditi out of himself and gave the charge of manifestation or the creation to Aditi, the force. And then Aditi manifested other powers which were doing the task of manifestation. So Aditi, or the divine Shakti, is the executrix. She is the power which will execute what has been given to her on the paper, like how we do in offices. Someone gives the idea and then there are executors who execute the idea. So she is the executrix of the inevitable idea, the divine will. Hampered, but the task is not easy. She undergoes a lot of difficulties. Hampered, enveloped by the hoops of fate. But she is patient, trusty of the slow eternal time. So she knows that I have to do this task. It may take a long time, but the task will be done. And again we are caught into determinisms of some form of the other. If I'm doing an unconscious act, I'm stuck in the loop of karma again. So I have to undergo that process of determinism. I have to take the sprouts. If I have, Kabir says, boya ped babul ka to aam kahan se khaye. So if I have sown the seeds of something which is thorny, I cannot expect beautiful fruits coming out of it. So what I can do, I think earlier also the lines that we were leading, bear. You must bear. Whatever the appearance, you must bear. Why I must bear? Because whatever I am whatever is happening to me right now, life situations, are the result of some previous seeds I have sown. Now, right now, my response to that situation is the seed I will sow now. That's why the call for conscious action. So right now, although no matter how hard and ugly may be the situation, right now, can I sow a better seed? Can I act from the highest possible state of consciousness? Can I invoke divine presence? And then I cancel the determinism. So whatever I have to go through, I will go through. But right now, I will not be sowing seeds which will give me much trouble in the future again. So each moment we are sowing seeds of our karma. In whatever way I respond or react to a situation is a seed I sow. So if I ask for the invocation of divine grace in each act, I sow that seed. If I act out of my own impulses, I continue the determinism of karma and the fate. So the task of this conscious force is not an easy task. At every step, she is hampered by the determinisms. But she is a patient trustee. She knows that in eternity, there is enough time. So I'm not in a hurry. Long time. Patient trustee of slow eternal time. Even eons are what? But a blink. Eons are nothing but a blink in eternity. So she's a patient trustee of slow eternal time. She moves on and she discharges her work. Her work is done from time to time. She absolves from hour to hour her secret charge. So she is doing her duties. The Shakti is doing her duties. Whatever time the moment is right, the action is carried out, absolves from hour to hour her secret charge. And I think it's our responsibility, since we have been given this free will, which we become conscious of slowly only, that at each moment of time, I have this free will, how to act, how consciously I can act. I can act through surrender, I can act through ego, which way I choose. And that determines the further flowchart of my life. So every time, every moment is very dynamic. Nothing is set in stone. There may be major events set in stone, but really there are so many flexible points that we have in each one of our life. So at each moment we can act either consciously or unconsciously, and then bear the fruits of that also. And there we become masters of our own destiny. There I become responsible for my own life. I cannot blame it on the situations, because the response is always in my hand. Yes, the situation is very difficult. I have been given a very difficult spouse, for example, but how do I respond to it? That changes the whole game. Yeah, so I think we'll continue in the next one now. Yeah, any further reflections, comments from anyone? Okay. Assuming there is nothing. Thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you, Monica.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Bye.
Monica.
Thank you.
Thanks, Monica.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.